What kind of a person would babies be in the future, born in a completely enclosed environment in the outside world? How would they communicate with each other if it was possible to raise those babies in an isolated environment like this, without ever seeing anyone? What language would they speak between them? Many times throughout history, newborn babies have been isolated from everyone and experimented on them. Since written and oral communications are blocked during these experiments, these obstacles are called language deprivation experiments. The first purpose of this phenomenon, which we call language deprivation experiments, is to determine the source of language, and the second is to understand the basics of human nature. Language deprivation experiments have been claimed to have been attempted at least 4 times through history, isolating infants from the normal use of spoken or signed language in an attempt to discover the fundamental character of human nature or the origin of language. It is extremely wrong behavior for babies to be isolated in order to understand such a thing. For this reason, the American literary scholar Roger Shattuck has described this type of research as a forbidden experiment due to the exceptional deprivation of the ordinary human contact that it requires. If we return to the old days, the historian Herodotus gives us the first record of such works in the first written sources. Before Christ, around 600, the Egyptian pharaoh I. Psamtik orders a shepherd to give 2 newborn babies. He offers the shepherd a condition: never say a word to the babies. However, babies have developed a new language among themselves decently. The first word in the language they developed was Bikos. This word is not in the Egyptian language. Long before those years, the language spoken by the Phrygians living in the Anatolian lands was the word bread. That is why the Egyptians of that time believed that Phrygia was the source of their own language and their own language. The Holy Roman Emperor John II. 13 by Frederick. In an experiment allegedly conducted in the 18th century, babies separated from their families again had their basic needs addressed, but they were not talked to. Why? Do you know? Because it is curious whether there is a native language in the world in general. What do you think were the main language predictions at that time? Hebrew, Greek, Latin, Arabic or Arabic is the language of the babies, respectively. It is thought that they will speak. Let's ask him again. Alright. Why? These are the languages of sacred books or ancient texts. Therefore, as you can deduce from these estimates, too, Frederick's main goal was to discover what language Adam and Eve spoke. The historian named Salim Baini, who narrates these events to us, does not say which language the babies spoke first, but in the following article he clearly expresses all the cruelties of those who conducted these experiments. A few centuries after Frederick II's alleged experiment, James IV of Scotland was said to have sent 2 children to be raised by a mute woman isolated on the island of Inchkeith, to determine if language was learned or innate. The children were reported to have spoken good Hebrew, but historians were skeptical of these claims soon after they were made. Mughal Emperor Akbar was later said to have children raised by mute wet nurses. Akbar held that speech arose from hearing, thus children raised without hearing human speech would become mute. Critical authors have doubted the veracity of the accounts. Probably neither Psamtik I nor James IV ever conducted any such studies, and probably neither did Frederick II. Only Akbar's study is most likely authentic, but offers an ambiguous outcome. In later years, children were found who were raised in isolation, although not by experiments. For example, this girl named Oksana, who is located in Ukraine, is able to communicate in the language spoken by them, since she grew up with dogs. So far, it has been found in other babies raised not only by dogs, but also by bears, cows, even ostriches. These babies naturally began to exhibit behaviors similar to the animals they grew up with. Although they spend time with people later, most of them still have not developed their language abilities. Throughout history, when you put babies in a place and isolate them from the outside world, it has been quite curious which native language they will speak. The biggest conclusion we can draw from these studies is that the language in human thought is important here. Thinking is a person talking to himself. This is the native language of a person and the highest level of language that he can develop.